What's going on, everyone? It's Adam, your host of the Baseball World Today podcast. We have a long list of what we got to talk about, but obviously, we're going to start with the biggest news of the day and arguably the biggest news of the offseason. That is Trevor Bauer signing with the Dodgers. A 3-year deal that is essentially a 2-year $85 million deal because he's making $45 million this first year, $40 the next year. Or actually, those might be flipped, and then just the rest in the third year. He has an opt-out every year. So I would expect him to opt out after the second year, but even if he doesn't for the Dodgers, you're not paying him a lot. So now, this is obviously a lot of money, a lot of over short years, but I think a pretty good move from the Dodgers. Meanwhile, I don't think he is the greatest pitcher ever. Like, for his career, he only has a 3.9. At worst, he's going to be an above-average pitcher that once we get through a couple years, even if he's not as good, you don't pay him a lot the third year. So what's great for them is honestly that it's a shorter-term deal. So, yeah, I mean, he's coming off just such a great season, obviously. And we'll have to see if he can continue on with it with the Dodgers. The Dodgers pitching staff, along with their coaches, it's really good. That might actually help him improve somehow next year. And the stuff has always just been there. This is a guy who is obviously stuff-wise top tier, and I gotta commend the Dodgers for going out there and trying to bring him in. I was actually pretty convinced he was going to sign with the Mets, quite frankly. Bauer was teasing everyone on Twitter, if you saw it, but now shocking news that he was signing with the Dodgers came out this afternoon around 2. And now if you're looking at the Dodgers, maybe the best rotation ever, maybe one of the best teams ever. Just think about this rotation. We got Buehler, Kershaw, Bauer, Price, who didn't pitch last year, just opting out. So I expect him to be healthy and have a great season. And then Julio Urias. Oh, and then we got Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin, two incredible young pitchers who just won't even have a spot in the rotation. I mean, it's just, depth-wise, it's just so ridiculous. 3 Cy Young Award winners, and that's not even counting their arguable ace, which is Walker Buehler. I mean, what is there to even say about this staff? I mean, it's unbelievable. There's truly not much to say, I think, about this staff. Like, otherwise, it's just maybe one of the best ever, quite frankly. Depth-wise, top-tier-wise, I mean, I could go on and on about it, but it just sort of is what it is. So, obviously, this is a hit for the Mets, but many people are, like, saying the Mets haven't had it. This is a big loss for the Mets. We gotta remember what a good offseason the Mets have had. They've still brought in Lindor. They still upped their rotation with Carrasco. They still strengthened the bullpen, and I still believe they're going to sign a center fielder. Now, it might not be a Jackie Bradley Jr. type because he is looking for 4 years, which I think is kind of ridiculous. But even if my guy I would bring in if I was them is Kevin Pillar, a great defender who had solid hitting last year. I think he would just be a perfect fit to bring in. And he's not a guy who's going to need to play every day, but if you need him late in the game for defensive purposes, I think he would be perfect. Had about an 800 OPS last year. I mean, it would just be a really good fit with his defense. I got to see him a lot last year with the Red Sox, and I just think that'd be a guy who would be a really good fit. Now, looking at it from the Dodgers' point of view, are they going to do anything else? Well, they still might bring back a third baseman, Justin Turner, quite frankly. Now, the thing is, they are way over the luxury cap right now. And I had said before, if the luxury cap is almost like a hard cap, because the penalties were so strict over it. But I think if you're the Dodgers at this point, you might as well just go way over it because you put yourself in the position to win a World Series for just not next year, but a year or so after. I mean, they should be in position to win a World Series for the next 5 years at least. I mean, we'll see if they bring him back. If not, they'll definitely bring in, I believe, someone to sort of fill the hole. I don't want to even say hole, but like fill the void maybe have Muncy move there and sign like a Mitch Moreland to play first. There's a lot of possibilities with how much depth they have and how much their guys can move around. So yeah, let's get back to Bauer for a second. And mainly the Dodgers rotation. Let's compare it actually to the Padres, because if you think about this from the Padres' point of view, this has got to be obviously pretty tough. I mean, you build as good of a team as you possibly can, as good of a rotation you possibly can for this coming season, and then the Dodgers just bring in Trevor Bauer on top of a staff that honestly was already nearly as good. I mean, it's tough if you're the Padres to already think you made all these moves and you might not have a chance to win the division the next 3 years. Again, this is my chance to advocate for the expanded playoff format, but that seems to have been falling on deaf ears. So, yeah. Let's compare these rotations. So, I'll say right now the number one for the Padres is probably Yu Darvish. Let's just go through the Padres rotation first. We got Yu Darvish, Snell, Joe Musgrove, all three of them brought in this last offseason. Chris Paddock, Danilson, Lamet, and Mackenzie Gore, who hasn't been called up yet, who we're waiting to see for them, who could be really good. Versus the Dodgers, who have Buehler, Kershaw, Bauer, Price off the rest of the season. May, Urias, and Goslin. So, I think as good as both these rotations, so I gotta say I think the Dodgers is just a step ahead at this point, which is saying something with how good this Padres rotation is. This Padres rotation is probably the second best in baseball, but I think the Dodgers are a full step ahead of them, which is just maddening to even think about, I think. I mean, how much better can the Padres rotation possibly even get? I mean, and the Dodgers are just that much better than them, I think, in terms of rotation. And we know their lineup too was just, we got 2 MVPs in there and multiple other good hitters. So, man, this rotation, and to think that they'll probably have May and Goslin in the bullpen to start the year, it's scary. It's truthfully scary. It's a tough break for the Padres. Hopefully we get the expanded playoffs in. A really tough break for the Mets, obviously, but not all hope is lost with them at all. I still expect them to finish second in their division and bring in another. Honestly, they could bring in like a Pilar and maybe even sign like a Rich Hill to 1-year contract just to shore up the rotation a little if they don't want to go with, I forget who they traded to from the Padres in the Musgrove trade, but if they don't want to go with Joey Luciani, if they want to go to him to start the season, then yeah, maybe bringing a Hill makes sense, honestly. So yeah, I mean, all I'm going to say from this is that Dodgers signed Bauer, who I don't love, but at the end of the day, it's just a good pitcher and isn't under contract for too long, even if this goes bad. So it's tough for the Padres, it's tough for the Mets, but this stuff is just top tier for them. It's just kind of incredible to think about, and man, I mean, they gotta be my World Series pick now for the upcoming season, as if they weren't like already, but it's scary to think about. It's scary to think about how good this rotation really is, along with the entire team. So all of baseball should watch out. We'll see how these other teams end up responding that were affected right at him. For me, it was also, one more point is, it's sad to see the Reds not really go after him, a guy who just had an incredible season for your team, and you don't really even go after him at all. Pretty tough if you're the Reds, if you're Reds fans, honestly. So we'll have to see how all these teams kind of bounce back. Will the Padres make another move? I don't really expect them to. I don't think they really should, honestly. I think they're kind of, I mean, I wouldn't blame them if they make one, but Mets, I think, will bring in at least a center fielder, or if not Pilar, Marisnick. They could get Jackie Bradley Jr., but I probably wouldn't. And then the Reds, I mean, they seem to be mailing in. I mean, the Central's nearly won already with Nolan Arenado on the Cardinals. So, yeah, I mean, Dodgers, they got to be my World Series pick. They just got to be. What's going on, everyone? It's Adam here, your host of the Baseball World Today podcast, with an emergency podcast, because there are a couple things that have happened since last night's recording that I just need to take some time to talk about. Obvious one, Marcell Ozuna was signed to a 4-year deal by the Braves last night. And yeah, I mean, I'm kind of surprised kind of disappointed. There's a lot of different ways for me to feel about this. I know I'd wanted the Rays to get him because that'd be a serious bolster to the lineup. But the fact of the matter is, the Braves kind of didn't need this middle of the order back in the lineup. And right now, it seems like the plan is to play him in left. But I feel like the Braves are pretty confident they'll be a DH either this year or next year to sign him to this 4-year deal. And I have to imagine that's their thought process in order to make a deal like this. Now, it certainly makes sense from that perspective. And I think any way you slice it, this is a pretty good deal for the Braves, quite frankly. They just saw obviously what the Dodgers did. They know if they want to really compete like they should be able to, they need to have this guy back in that lineup. Now, do they do anything else this offseason? I'd have to imagine no, quite frankly. I think their team is very, very good. They've already made additions that have improved the team, that have kept the team solid. Obviously, I do think losing Duvall is going to hurt. The problem is you can't really control that if there's no extra position to play these guys, because he gave you 16 home runs last year with an OPS that was 833, so definitely above average. But the problem is there's just nowhere really to play him right now because you got the outfield really just kind of filled. I mean, if there was a DH, then we're really talking about maybe bringing him back as well, but the way it just stacks up is there's not much they can really do right now, honestly. So that's unfortunate for them. Do the Mets see this and say, okay, maybe we should really add another starter now? Like, I've heard they've been interested. I've heard them interested in multiple guys. I mean, this doesn't probably affect the Mets too much since they knew they're going to be in a dogfight with the Braves this upcoming season anyway. But it makes them maybe rush a little more. Maybe this inclines them to go after Jackie a little bit more, which I don't really think they should do for center field, but they certainly could. Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a really good move for the Braves and a really good deal for Ozuna, who seemed like just yesterday he had no real market. It seemed like the Red Sox, Rays, and the Braves are the only team with any interest. And of that, I was like, okay, well, I don't think there's a chance the Red Sox sign him because they're not going to want him to play the field, quite frankly, and not want to move the outfield around for him to just be a poor defender in left. The Rays, okay, maybe you see it for 1 year, but not anything past that. So you had to imagine the Braves were the front runner unless they just fell out completely, and they would have really just fallen to the Rays. But I am happy how this turned out, and yeah, I mean, having Ozuna back in that lineup with Freddie Freeman is going to be important. Freddie Freeman coming off an incredible season, he needs some protection in there, and this is certainly it. Now they've got their core lineup back, and I'm excited to see what they can do next year. So now we're going to talk quickly about really just the Athletics. First off, they brought back Mike Fiers, which I'll mention first. Had a very okay year last year, but it's been solid throughout his career. So this is a good move. And the A's made an interesting move, trading Khris Davis and a couple of prospects for Elvis Andrus. So let's talk about Khris Davis first in this. Khris Davis, the king of batting .247, has signed a contract extension either, I think, in 2019. And of course, that after that, he just has been, since then, he's been pretty bad. And that's just a matter of the truth. So I believe he has this year, and then he'll be eligible for free agency. I think this is sort of like a move where the Rangers are like, okay, we're willing to take on this money for the prospects, and for the Athletics, they're like, well, we can't really afford to pay this contract if he's going to be such a bad player. Meanwhile, now they can maybe go out there and make some other moves. And in the meantime, they also do get Elvis Andrus, who was not good at all last year, but they needed a shortstop, and that's just the truth. And there were just about none available on the free agent market. Literally no noticeable ones, as I said yesterday. Andrus was quite bad last year, but throughout his career has been a solid producing hitter, a defensive first type of shortstop, and if you could just get him to hit league average, it'll be good. Right now, the Athletics, though, are definitely worse than they were last year. So, listen, they don't have Marcus Semien, and losing him is the big hole, and replacing him with Andrus it fills the hole, but it doesn't replace his value at all. So I think they'll need bounce back years next year from a couple guys like Olsen to really make some noise. Olsen has always had huge pop, but just had a down year last year. They can't have him bat 195 and expect to do some serious damage, I think, this year. So, yeah, I mean, that's all I really have to say about that. Hopefully now the A's have a little spending money to maybe make a move or two, bring in like a guy like Rich Hill or Odorizzi or a bat even. Not really sure what they would be looking for, but yeah, I mean, and yeah, I mean, for the Rangers though, I think this is a really good deal. Elvis was at his time. I'm sure they have a young player that they would like to get some time at shortstop. For the A's, this also makes a lot of sense because, well, they were just sort of pressed here. They didn't have really many other options. And if they give up a couple of prospects to load off a big contract and make other moves, then yeah, this could end up being a really big net positive in an offseason where the A's have lost a lot. Heck, we saw it already. They brought it back Mike Fiers right after doing this deal. So we could see that those effects could take place and really help them out. I think that's actually all for today. I just wanted to get on and talk about both of those quickly because I think they're important things that have happened and they need to be talked about. One more thing I'll mention is Indians don't look like they're going to trade Jose Ramirez. He was a guy I was thinking the Mets would want to talk about, but for now, it doesn't seem like there'll be too many more serious moves in the next week or so, but yeah, we'll have to see what happens there. And, really good moves by all these teams is just what I'm going to say. So, yeah, thank you all for listening.